ViolarulesReacts here, and welcome to another blind commentary. Today I'm going to be reacting to another video by AJ Pony AP's channel called Cleave. This is a 5-part series of a Grimdark reading that involves Lyra and Bonbon, it would seem. Yeah, I'm excited to hear this Grimdark. As you know, I'm a fan of Grimdarks and Darkfics and all that. So let's go ahead and get started. Cleave, a full cast reading. Yeah, I've heard this music a lot before in other Grimdark projects. Very popular tune to use. The guest stars Midnight Reads, Casey Dark Horse, Sparrow 9642, and Lotus Moon.
Lyra would always remember being born.
Okay, so Sparrow's
gravity pinning her to the hard kitchen floor, acid smells from spent spells, ingredients burning her eyes, and chilly midnight air sapping heat away from her damp coat. Bonbon lay on the opposite side of the room, sprawled on the floor like a rag doll, and staring at Lyra with the same wonder and fear that she herself felt overcome with. Most of all, she remembered Candy Heart screaming. Her hooded form had crashed around the room, kicking over the steaming cauldron in the middle of the floor, tearing down the crystal charm suspended from the ceiling, and running her hooves across the suddenly bare spot on her forehead. For nearly 10 seconds, Lyra remembered the full incantation, the unholy mixture of zebra potion craft and unicorn spell wizardry that was responsible for her life, for Bonbon's, and for Candy Heart's missing horn. And then she fell asleep for the first time. Lyra woke in the late morning, a strong breeze whispering through the streets outside, rhythmically opening and slamming the unbolted side door. Candy Heart probably broke the hinge when she ran off into the night. At least, that's where Lyra assumed she'd gone. At the moment, she didn't care. She rolled onto her back and gave the kitchen a thorough examination. Everything looked so funny from down here, with her mane against the floor. The massive 12-burning stove sitting against the opposite wall almost looked like one of those magical chariots that Pegasus sometimes pulled through the sky. She held up her hooves and squinted until the illusion was complete. She was floating up in the sky, miles above the ceiling-turned ground, and the boring old stove was a magnificent metal chariot, waiting to take her on a wild adventure. She laughed at the thought, and turned her attention to the giant metal door directly behind her. It wasn't just a walk-in freezer, not for her. Just behind the door was a magical world where ponies did nothing but eat ice cream and dance. Or something like that. Lyra rolled onto her stomach and felt the drabness of the kitchen, its utter familiarity, tear at her mind. She couldn't just sit here all day, not when she had a whole house to explore. She stood, stretched her legs, and took one last moment to listen. The kitchen was deathly silent, but she could hear a faint scrubbing sound coming from the storefront. Maybe the other new pony she'd seen last night, the one with the light tan coat, was cleaning up. Maybe that's why the kitchen floor wasn't a mess like it had been last night. That was nice of her. The front of the shop was boring, though. There was nothing out there except dusty countertops, dustier floors, and filthy display cases. Maybe they wouldn't stay filthy, assuming the other new pony really was cleaning or something, just so long as Lyra didn't have to do it. Lyra headed through the other door instead, the one that led to the house's front room. She started her examination with the line of pictures perched over the fireplace. In the first one, she saw good old Mom and Dad on either side of the barely walking Candy Heart, still young and innocent. She moved down the lines of pictures, watching time take its course.
Is Candy Heart a made-up character, or is that actually a show?
Adulthood, playing with blocks here, baking cookies with Mom there, learning to count with Dad, and so on. The only constants were her steady march towards maturity and her parents' decline into old age. They were all wrinkled by the time she was a teenager, but still looked so proud. By the next to last picture, she was a fully grown and indulged with an X-shaped cutie mark formed by 2 candy canes. Her expression had changed too. The youthful enthusiasm from the earlier photos, the can-do-anything attitude that earned her A's in school, and the attention and prestige of universities had morphed into something else. What was it exactly? Lyra checked her own reflection in the frame's glass covering. Try as she might, she couldn't match Candy Heart's eerie smile. She just couldn't get the right mix of almost malice and definite arrogance. Instead, she crossed her eyes and stuck out her tongue. Her own voice made her giggle. She'd never heard it before. It wasn't as harsh as Candy Heart's. She was much nicer colored too. A light greenish blue, or was that bluish green, and a mane with white highlights. That was so much nicer than the mean old Candy Heart's dark coat and stark white mane. Mom and Dad weren't even in the last picture. Was that before the funerals or after? Lyra didn't remember. Candy Heart was just standing there in front of the then bustling candy shop, giving the camera a confident smile. This was for the photo for the paper, wasn't it? For that article about the much beloved shop
For some reason I'm getting
on
like
the business to their
Silent
daughter.
Hill
Lyra
vibes
could
from the
guess Candy
story.
Heart saw through the photo. Even if her facial expression didn't match, she wasn't happy about owning the shop, and never had been. Why bother keeping up the family business when she could board up the windows and work on her own freaky ideas? What ideas were they again?
Ideas?
Candy Heart could keep all the scary memories for all Lyra cared. Lyra's own reflection caught her attention again. Her gaze drifted upwards to the horn sticking out of her unkept mane.
I've got to keep it. I got the horn! I got the horn!
She pranced around the room and dove into the nearest armchair. The armchair rocked back on 2 legs, prompting her to steady it with her magic. Her magic. It was her magic now. Now, it was nothing but longing around while she let her horn do all the tough stuff. She pointed her 4 legs at the kitchen.
Now, go make me an ice cream sundae, magic horn.
Her horn lit up, but that was all. The distant freezer door handle didn't even rattle. Instead, sweat broke out on Lyra's brow. Magic was harder than she expected, and a lot more tiring. How had Candy Heart gotten so good at it? She scowled at the freezer. Ice cream could wait. She still had most of a house left to explore. Lyra moved from room to room, interspersing moments of contemplation with general silliness. All of Candy Heart's scary spells and potion stuff was tucked away in her room, thankfully. With the door shut, it was like it wasn't even there. Lyra didn't need it, and if she couldn't see it, she didn't need to worry about it. Besides, there were 2 perfectly usable guest bedrooms down the hall, complete with beds, blankets, and no Candy Heart memories. That weird pony never had guests, much less
By
friends.
the way, if you're wondering how the story is broken up, I think there are 6 chapters
She made
in this
faces
story.
with every shiny surface, decided on a new color for each wall, rainbow, and taken more than enough slides down the banister. She sat up on the upper landing, watching bright afternoon sunlight make its slow progression across the floorboard. Her boredom was starting to get serious now, like an itch inside her head. Could she use her unicorn magic to scratch her own brain? That sounded too scary. She looked up at the skylight, and the sun perfectly framed within it. Looking directly at the sun hurt her eyes. Maybe if she squinted just right it wouldn't, or maybe it hurt even more. She didn't want her eyes to get burned out. Being blind would be really sad and boring. She opted to check out the ceiling instead, and soon she found something even Candy Heart had forgotten.
The attic!
At last, she found something her magic was good for. Grabbing the just-out-of-reach pull cord, the door in the ceiling swung open, and a set of steps unfolded in front of her. Lyra took a deep breath of the musty air as she stared into the darkness above. What was up here? If Candy Heart didn't even remember, then there couldn't be any of her scary magic stuff, right? At least finding out would starve off her boredom for a few minutes. She took the steps one at a time, noting how some of them creaked noisily under her weight, while others remained silent. The shapes of long-forgotten family heirlooms and childhood relics were barely visible in the attic's dim light. Some ponies might have called the place spooky, but then again, most ponies didn't have Candy Heart's memories in their head. All these cardboard boxes didn't look like a lot of fun, but at this point, Lyra was desperate. Even leafing through an old photo album sounded better than trying to stare at the sun. She left the stairs and paced through the attic, boxes surrounding her on all sides, along with what looked like all the dust in the world. Every time she set down her hoof, a miniature explosion of grain nearly overtook her foreleg. Would stirring up enough dust to make her sneeze be fun? Definitely, but that could wait. She needed to savor this last room, the last bastion of newness. After this, she'd be stuck trying to entertain herself with all the stuff she found already, or, worse still, help that other new pony clean. A hefty wooden case became her first target. She leaned down, blew the dust off, and watched with delight as it surrounded another box in an indoor fog bank. Without its dusty blanket, the case looked downright fancy. Time couldn't erase the lacerated wood, shiny metal hinges, and curved insignia over the clasps. The lettering was almost too curvy and decorative to read.
Heartstrings? Heartstrings.
The name stirred something in her. Something old. Lyra undid the clasp and lifted the heavy lid. She knocked over a vase on one of her earlier banister rides, and hadn't batted an eye when it shattered on the floor. Somehow, this felt different. Was it the attic, the wooden case, or something within herself? She'd been breathing for less than 24 hours, and yet the first wild imagination in the kitchen seemed like a lifetime ago. When the light caught the attic's meager light, Lyra started to cry. Childhood memories came flooding back, the kind that Kenny Hart refused to revisit. She remembered the front room, decked out in balloons and streamers, and containing every feeling in her class. She remembered winning Pin the Tail on the Pony, eating 2 slices of peppermint chocolate cake, and opening present after present after present. The dolls were nice, and so were the puzzling toy train. The contents of the fancy wooden case at the bottom of the pile, the gift from Mom and Dad, was beyond imagining.
This was Great-Grandma's. Mom and Dad gave it as a birthday present. Something challenging and different. For their super smart filly, something to help her find her special talent.
Lyra's hoof caressed the burnished metal and, after a moment, gently plucked the strings. The twanging noises were a revelation, a moment of enlightenment second only to being born. She remembered the whole story now. She remembered Kenny Hart keeping the lyre on the nightstand so it wouldn't be out of sight. She remembered her whole Saturday spent practicing until her hooves chipped and her eyes couldn't focus on the songbook. She remembered Dad paying the music tutor for the advanced lessons since she already knew the basics. Most of all, she remembered crying as she read the rejection letters from the Canterlot Academy of Music. She hadn't gotten the scholarship, so she wasn't going at all. At least the dark day that followed earned Candy Hart her cutie mark. She realized she hadn't loved the lie. Not really. What she actually loved was being the best. And if the lie couldn't give her that, then back in the case it went. Everything that wouldn't make her the best had to go too. The lie was just a big X on her list of possibility life pursuits. And so, she finally had earned her cutie mark. An X formed by a candy cane to match the namesake, and to sum up her convention, she would be the absolute best at something, no matter what. Except, that wasn't Candy Hart's story. The mare currently plucking out the cords was only a small part of her. The creative, free-spirited part. A tear disappeared in the dust covering the floor as Lyra hummed a nursery rhyme. Hours flew by as she extracted melodies first with her hoof and then with her magic. With the greatest reverence, she removed the instrument from its case and presented it to her chest.
But I do love you, Lyra. I really do. I'm calling myself Lyra. Lyra Heartstrings.
A warmth rushed through her, all the way from her horn to her tail. All of the past antics and her race against boredom faded away in a glowing sense of completeness that lingered on her flank. She found her passion, her talent, her purpose. She was here to inspire, to dream, to create. Based on her new cutie mark, she planned on starting out with music. Bonbon's eyes flew open. She studied the dim light illuminating the kitchen and how the sun was just barely peeking over the rooftops visible through the windows. Was it 5 in the morning? 6? 7? Candy Hart's rampage last night included smashing the clock that normally sat on the countertop. She pushed herself off the floor with her front hooves.
Need a new clock. Have to have a clock in the kitchen.
Last night's nightmare, which began with her being called into existence and ended with Candy Hart storming through the side door in a rage, also included the kitchen being destroyed. The awful black cauldron where Candy Hart had mixed those fall-smelling ingredients was tipped over, and the green slop she brewed had spread out into a massive puddle. The other spell ingredients were here too. Burnt phoenix feathers from the evergreen forest, dark crystals from the frozen north, exotic plants from Trottingham Mountains, and, assuming Bonbon remembered the incantation correctly, a dragon's claw, procured at midnight. All of it was charred black, and all of it had to go. Bonbon ran to the broom closet in search of a mop, bucket, and a bottle of industrial straight disinfectant. Bonbon didn't notice the other pony until she finished mopping. She was a ghastly shade of aquamarine, not too far removed from the color of the horrible stuff Bonbon had just finished pouring down the drain. She leaned down and gave her a sniff. The pony didn't smell bad, at least. Hopefully when she was clean, and hopefully she'd wake up soon and be on her way. The front of the shop came next. No pony had been in here to sell candy or buy it for years. What little light the boarded up front windows let in painted the scene almost as horrific as the kitchen.
I'm just trying to figure out.
There was
the
dust
story,
everywhere.
I guess
The floor
I've
hadn't
listened
been
to it
cleaned
before.
or even stepped on since Candy
Name
Heart
of this
shut down
chapter
the
is
shop
in
and threw out
threes,
whatever
by the way.
candy
I
was
forgot
left
to
over.
mention that.
Not that the display case would fit to hold food anymore, of course. Just looking at the grime on the glass twisted Bonbon's stomach into knots. Getting this place back in working order would take hours, 4 of them by her estimates. 3¼ hours later, Bonbon was once again dumping a final bucket full of filth down the drain. She watched the gray water spiral around in the sink and on its way out of sight.
Better. So much better.
Never had the display case shine like they did now, and not even when they were new. There wasn't a single particle of dust to be found. Better still, the kitchen was even cleaner. Every countertop gleamed, and every floor tile sparkled. Even the stove and the freezer door looked brand new. Not even a surgeon needed a room cleaner than this. She trotted to the center of the kitchen and took a deep, satisfied breath. She had every reason to be happy. Never had the shop been in better shape. Mom and Dad would have been so proud. Bonbon's smile faltered. Every way she turned, she saw cleanliness, but somehow that wasn't enough. She sat on the floor and ran her hooves through her mane. Her stomach was twisting into knots again, and her heart was pounding. Hopefully it was just a little panic attack, nothing too serious. Hopefully she wouldn't throw up. Although, if she did, at least she'd get to mop the floor again. Where was that new pony
So they
with the
all have
aquamarine
a
coat? And maybe
weird
she knew
quirk,
what was wrong.
I guess.
Maybe she could fix all of this. A
Bonbon
gleeful
is
scream,
obsessed with
followed
being
by a
clean,
crash of an antique face
Lyra
on the
just wants
hardwood
to have
floor,
fun.
echoed
We
through
know
a
nothing
doorway.
about,
Maybe
Candy
that other
Heart
pony
yet.
was nothing but trouble. At least she left the kitchen.
Except that she lost
Bonbon
her
didn't
horn,
care
I
she
guess.
burned the rest of the building to the ground, so long as the kitchen and the shop stayed the way they were supposed to. What did supposed to look like? If she figured that out, then maybe her breathing would slow down, not to mention her heart rate. Cleaning everything had felt so good though. What else was there? She closed her eyes and rocked back and forth.
Cleaned everything. Everything. What's next?
Her mind swam with old memories. Candy Heart's life was such an incoherent mess, the kind that a broom or a mop just couldn't fix.
Mommy, if I help you do the dishes, can I help you make candy? That sounds lovely, dear. Let's make candy. Candy, candy.
Bonbon sprang off the floor and ran to the cabinet closest to
Oh,
the shop.
right, because
The one where Candy Heart's mom kept her books. Books that adult Candy Heart
truffles
had
or
never
candy,
seen fit
I
to
guess.
move. Her hooves trembled as candy recipes, some in books and others on hoof-written index cards, tumbled out of the cabinet and onto the floor.
Right, because Lyra got
Bonbon
hurt.
sprang off the floor and ran to the cabinet closest to the shop. The one where Candy Heart's mom kept her books. Books that adult Candy Heart had never seen fit to move. Her hooves trembled as candy recipes, some in books and other in hoof-written index cards, trembled out of the cabinet and onto the floor. She took a glance at each one and tossed it aside. She made them all before, or at least Candy Heart had. Wasn't that one of her happiest childhood achievements, memorizing all the family recipes? That meant Bonbon knew them all too, or so she hoped. The panic monster still had its claws wrapped around her neck. If she didn't do something fast, if she didn't make the kitchen feel right, whatever that meant, her heart would burst out of her chest. And who would clean up a mess like that? Definitely not Miss Aquamarine over in the front room based on her success at keeping the family heirlooms intact. The freezer was remarkably well stocked considering how long it's been since Candy Heart cooked anything. All the basic ingredients were still here, and thanks to the miracle of refrigeration, they were probably all still good. Bonbon wrapped her foreleg around a package of frozen butter and dragged it into the warmth of the kitchen. Why did the other new pony get a horn? Why was she stuck doing all this work with nothing but hooves? Why didn't that awful spell just make a horn for each of them? At some point, she'd have to clean out the pantry too. Candy Heart's potion supplies were lined up on the shelf right next to confectionery sugar and condensed milk. That was a problem for later. Right now,
So I guess
Bonbon needed to
Candy
cook.
Heart was trying
She
out some
snatched the
sort of
mixing bowl
spell
out of
and
her
it ended
cabinet,
up
set it on a scale, and started pouring
splitting
the
her
sugar.
personality
3
into
dozen bonbons.
Lyra and
needs
Bonbon.
A pound of sugar, half a pound of chocolate, and 1/2.
The scale's needle jumped past the 1 pound mark, and yet Bonbon didn't stop. The bonbon recipe floating in her mind was joined by 2 others that required common dry ingredients.
That's 3 dozen bonbons, 2 dozen caramels, and a dozen truffles. I better get the double boilers ready.
The stove was a monstrous beast. 12 burners and just as many dials were ready and waiting to handle everything a professional confectionery could possibly need. The instant Bonbon twisted the nearest knob, jets of blue flames erupted under the corresponding burner amid the quiet hiss of gas. The finest clocks in Equestria couldn't match this level of precision. Before her sat a fine-tuned instrument just waiting for skilled hooves like hers to make it sing. Hours flew by, as did recipes. Dirty mixing bowls, whisks, pot, and spatulas first filled the sink and then began overtaking the neighboring counters. Bonbon didn't care about the mess, not anymore. Dirtying everything in the kitchen just meant she get to clean it all again. Besides, all her effort wasn't in vain. Tray after tray of candies, from caramel to toffee to chocolate, lay cooling on the countertops. At this rate, she ran out of room in the kitchen and had to start using the shop's display case for their intended purposes. Bonbon studied the thermometer sticking out of the double boiler on the corner burner. The red liquid inside the glass bale was drawing ever closer to perfection, the precise temperature at which she could turn off the heat. Why had Candy Heart hated the family business so much? Bonbon could, and had, spent hours sitting here churning out sweets. The whole process was so perfect, a set of instruments that, if followed to the letter, yield success. That's
There's
all
that
Bonbon
theme
needed
of
to
everything
survive.
being perfect
She
again.
needed order. She needed instructions. She cleaned the kitchen so she could start cooking, and she started cooking so she could make the little balls of sugar crowding up the countertops. At long last, the candy thermometer gave Bonbon its silent signal. The chocolate was ready. She turned off the heat and reached the double boilers with gloved hooves. Steam poured out of the water-filled lower section as she hissed the chocolate-filled upper pot away.
Time to pour some more bonbon.
Her back legs gave out just as the pot left the stove. Gravity pulled her down, but her eyes never let the pot clench between her forelegs. Molten chocolate sloshed over the pot's rim, thankfully to the side and not towards her face, and splashed across the floor just as she hit the ground. The pot clanged against the floor and rolled away, spilling the last of its contents on the tile
She
that
also
she had
has
spent
to realize
hours
what her
scrubbing.
name is.
She didn't move for over a minute, during which time her gaze remained fixated on the ruined chocolate. This wasn't supposed to happen. Pot didn't belong on the ground, and chocolate definitely didn't. That inside twisting sense of panic came back at full force, this time accompanied by the sudden realization that her whole body was shaking. She felt cool a moment ago, and yet now she realized her mane was soaked through with sweat. What was wrong now? Why did she suddenly feel so weak? Her body, new as it was, couldn't be that different from the oven. It was just a machine, and machines only needed so many things to keep functioning properly.
Need something. But what? I have to clean up that chocolate. I have to.
She reached a trembling hook towards the mess and crawled helplessly against the floor, and then the smell hit her. This whole time she'd been acting like she was a manufacturing lug nuts, as opposed to sweet-smelling delicious candy.
I'm hungry.
Saying it made it real. It took the notion out of the nebulous realm of thought and made it into a self-giving command. Eat something. In her current
I
state,
see.
she stood no chance of getting the freezer door open. Instead, she crawled over to the counter with her nose in the air. Everything smelled amazing. If she had been any less desperate, she'd never been able to choose. Instead, she forced herself into a standing position and wrapped her limbs around the first morsel she saw. It was chocolate, smooth, rich, and slightly warm. A sweet nugget center hit her a
So
moment
is she
later,
going to eat
and she
all that
sighed in
candy she
contentment.
just made?
At last she understood. She understood it all. Bonbon knew Mom's pained realization when Candy Heart first asked her why all the candies in the shop tasted the same, and she knew Candy Heart's mounting annoyance at having to make more of the stuff every day. Once learning was over, once she memorized every recipe, candy preparation was just a chore. Wheats did nothing for Candy Heart. She was tone deaf to the orchestra playing out on Bonbon's tongue. Why would she ever want to spend her life making sugary confection that tasted like wax? It wasn't her fault there wasn't any pony else to take over the family business, no matter how much the shop would be missed. Other ponies were as dull and useless as Candy itself. Not even the counseling after school helped. Not like Mom and Dad hoped anyways. Those degrees and a certified doctors might have thought they'd gotten through to her, that they'd shown her the value of friendship and empathy. All they've really done is explain how normal ponies work, how Candy Heart needs to treat them in order to get her way. It turned out that ponies weren't any different from candy recipes or sheet music. She just had to learn how to read them, to manipulate them, and in time, to rise beyond their reach. Bonbon grabbed an entire tray and brought it to the floor.
Okay.
She lay there, blissfully, consuming her hard work.
Candy Heart was just crazy. Even Mom and Dad knew that by the end. But not me. I'm not crazy. I'm a good little filly. I'll carry on the family business, and I'll love every second of it. Every sale, every dirty pot, and every
Scarfed down another candy.
bonbon, because that's me.
3 wrapped candies appeared on her flank as she
There
ate
it
more.
is. Okay, so I guess Candy Heart wanted to be perfect, so she tried some sort of incantation to make it so, and ended up creating a split personality version of herself, I guess. Trying to understand the story so far. It's called In Threes. Because it was mentioned that she was into music and into making candy until she realized that she didn't get into the music institute that she wanted to get into, so she gave up music because she couldn't be the best at it. And as for candy, it was boring to her, so she didn't want to continue the family business. But I guess we'll figure out more about the cauldron and spell in the later chapters of the story, and how they figure into the plot. Because Lyra and Bonbon had sort of assumed that Candy Heart ran off into the town. And maybe that is the case. Who knows? I don't know. But I do like this story so far. It's cool. I also like AJ Pony's narration of it. It's very funny. So, but yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, give it a like. Also be sure to like my Facebook page and follow me on Twitter, as well as support my Patreon. All 3 links will be in the description below. And subscribe for more. And if you are subscribed or a new subscriber right now, be sure to hit that bell icon to get notified when I upload videos. This is ViolarulesReacts, signing off. Talk to you later.